5 years ago, he buried her under the floorboards and convinced the world she'd vanished forever. Tonight, the silence cracks, because at this moment, a knock echoes at the door. Her knock. What do you do when the dead return, demanding answers or justice? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, hit subscribe so you never miss our upcoming videos. 5 years ago, in a quiet town where everyone knew everyone's business, a man named Ethan Wells was seen as the picture of stability. He was 38 years old, a quiet contractor who built porches and fixed roofs for his neighbors. His wife, Claire, was 35, a middle school teacher adored by her students. Their life together looked simple but enviable. Morning coffees on the porch, Friday night dinners, a tidy little house on Maple Street. The kind of life that seemed untouchable. But perfection is fragile. One evening, Claire left the house with a grocery list and a promise to return in an hour. She never came back. At midnight, Ethan called the police. His voice shook on the line. "My wife never came home." And just like that, the story of a perfect marriage was cracked open. When officers arrived at their home, the evidence was unsettling. Claire's car sat in the driveway. The groceries she had purchased were neatly stacked by the door, like she'd been interrupted mid-step. Her purse was inside the house. No sign of forced entry, no struggle, no screaming neighbors who had heard anything unusual. Detective Grace Tompkins, a seasoned officer with nearly 20 years on the force, took the case. She would later describe that night as the moment she knew something was wrong. In her words, "People don't vanish into thin air, not without someone noticing." Ethan appeared devastated. He told investigators he had been working in his shed, lost track of time. He said Claire often took late walks to clear her head, but this time she never returned. For the first few days, the search carried hope, but the silence only deepened. In the days that followed, the community rallied. Flyers with Claire's photo were taped to telephone poles, stapled to church bulletin boards, and handed out at every gas station. Candlelight vigils flickered across the town square. Teachers from her school wept into each other's shoulders, her students holding handwritten cards that read, "Come home, Mrs. Wells." Ethan, pale and exhausted, appeared in front of cameras begging for information. He clasped his hands as if in prayer. "Please, if anyone has seen Claire, call the police. We just want her back." But whispers began to stir beneath the surface. Neighbors noticed Ethan's unusual calm when reporters weren't watching. Some recalled the arguments they had overheard through open windows on humid summer nights. And quietly, the question that no one dared say out loud was beginning to form. Was Ethan the grieving husband he claimed to be, or something else entirely? Detective Tompkins studied Ethan closely. His account of the night shifted in small, almost imperceptible ways. First, he said Claire had left after dinner. Later, he told an officer she had gone for a walk at dusk before eating. When confronted, he brushed it off as confusion brought on by stress. Still, the inconsistencies gnawed at the detective. She ordered a forensic sweep of the house. Cadaver dogs circled the property, their handlers watching every move. In the basement, one of the dogs stopped, sat down, whined. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A signal. Yet when investigators pried up floorboards and searched the earth below, they found nothing. No blood, no body, no evidence that Claire had ever met harm in that house. For now, Ethan was a man without proof against him, and Claire was a woman without a trace.
Ethan's days grew rehearsed. He mowed the lawn. He went to work. He greeted neighbors with an exhausted smile, as though playing the role of a man barely holding it together. Yet behind closed doors, whispers of doubt swirled. A cashier at the local grocery store remembered seeing Ethan late one night, buying bleach, gloves, and trash bags. When detectives asked about it, he claimed he was preparing to deep clean the basement. Innocent enough, unless paired with Claire's disappearance. Still, without evidence, suspicion remained intangible. The town was caught between sympathy and fear. Vigils continued. The local news station replayed Ethan's pleas on loop, and every time his face appeared on screen, more viewers tilted their heads, narrowing their eyes, asking silently, "Is he lying to us?" Ethan, meanwhile, carried on, his composure as carefully constructed as the house he once built with Claire. Weeks stretched into months. The search for Claire became routine. Detectives retraced their steps, canvassed highways, dragged ponds, and brought in cadaver dogs again. Nothing. Yet Detective Tompkins refused to close the case. She kept returning to the same puzzle. No body, no evidence, but too many inconsistencies to ignore. She'd studied Ethan's patterns, his spending habits, his phone records. One night, buried deep in phone logs, she noticed a call placed from Ethan's number to Claire's hours after he claimed she vanished. When pressed, Ethan shrugged. "Maybe I pocket dialed." It was plausible, yet it gnawed at Tompkins. She began to wonder if Ethan's mistake wasn't in what he did the night Claire disappeared, but in what he thought he had erased. Something told her he had left a fragment of truth behind, a thread waiting to be pulled. And once unraveled, it would reveal everything. 5 years passed. Seasons rolled across the small town like clockwork. Snow on rooftops, children splashing in sprinklers, leaves gathering in gutters. Claire's case remained unsolved, filed among cold cases that haunt detectives long after their retirement. Ethan moved forward, or at least that's how it appeared. He sold the house he once shared with Claire, bought a smaller place across town, and took a job at a local hardware store. His face no longer appeared on television. For many, the case faded into memory, a mystery whispered only during late-night gatherings when neighbors exchanged stories of unfinished tragedies. And then, on a rainy Thursday evening, just after Ethan returned from work, there was a knock at his door. He opened it, expecting the delivery man or perhaps a lost traveler. Instead, standing on his porch, soaking wet and shivering, was a woman he thought he had buried forever. The woman whispered one word, "Ethan." His blood turned cold. He staggered back, gripping the edge of the doorway. Her hair was longer, streaked with gray, her face gaunt from years of hardship. But the eyes, unmistakable eyes of Claire, locked onto him. She was alive. Neighbors who heard the commotion later recalled a strangled sound, half scream and half sob spilling from Ethan's lips. He dragged her inside, shutting the door with trembling hands. His mind raced, the ground beneath his carefully reconstructed life cracking open. Where had she been? How had she survived? And why now, 5 years later, does she return? Claire collapsed on the couch, clutching her stomach. "I had to get away." "But you thought you buried me, didn't you?" Ethan's face drained of color. Her words weren't just an accusation. They were a revelation, a secret buried as deep as the night she vanished.
Ethan sat across from Claire, his chest heaving as though he couldn't take in enough air. He muttered, You're not real." Claire leaned forward, her hands trembling but her gaze steady. "I'm as real as the night you left me in that shallow grave." Her words struck like a blade. Ethan's face twisted, memories clawing their way back. Moonlight on the field, dirt clinging to his hands, the sound of her muffled cries fading into silence. Yet here she was, alive, staring at him with a mixture of pain and fury. For Ethan, the walls he'd built over 5 years crumbled in an instant. Neighbors would later recall that same night they saw Ethan pacing his living room, lights flickering past midnight. They didn't know that, inside, the man they thought they knew
was unraveling, confronted not by guilt alone, but by the ghost he thought he'd buried. Claire's return wasn't just survival, it was revelation. She told Ethan what happened that night. He'd struck her, dragged her, and buried her, certain she'd never rise again. But the soil was shallow, the blow not fatal. Hours later, dazed and suffocating, she clawed her way out. Broken, she stumbled into the woods. She survived on strangers' kindness, hiding in shelters, changing her name, all the while waiting for the right moment. "You thought I'd stay silent," she whispered, "but I've come back for the truth." Ethan trembled. For the first time, the predator was cornered. He begged her not to go to police, offered apologies too late to matter. Claire's lips curled into a bitter smile. "You buried me once. Now it's my turn to bury your lies." The man who once controlled every narrative was finally powerless, exposed to the one person who knew his darkest truth. Detective Tompkins received the call she never thought would come. A woman walked into the station claiming to be Claire Whitfield, the one officially declared dead years prior. Skepticism filled the room until she provided details no one outside the investigation could have known. The color of Ethan's clubs, the ditch near Old Miller's Field, the muffled words he hissed before leaving her to die. The precinct fell into stunned silence. Tompkins, who had carried the case in her heart for half a decade, whispered, "We finally have her." But shock wasn't enough. Proof was needed. Claire agreed to testify, to recount every memory etched into her bones. For law enforcement, it was more than a breakthrough, it was a resurrection of justice. And for Ethan, still pacing in his small house, it was the tightening of a noose that had been waiting since the night he betrayed his vows. News spread like wildfire. Claire was alive. Headlines blared across the county. Neighbors who had pitied Ethan now turned on him, whispering at grocery aisles, crossing the street when he walked by. Ethan tried to deny it, claiming Claire was an imposter, a cruel fraud. But DNA tests confirmed she was the wife he had buried. The trial was swift. Prosecutors painted Ethan as a man of control, whose temper festered until he committed the unthinkable. The courtroom listened in pin-drop silence as Claire took the stand, her voice steady despite tears streaking her face. "I loved him," she said, "and he tried to erase me." Every juror leaned forward, struck by her strength. By the time closing arguments ended, Ethan's fate was sealed. The jury deliberated only hours. Guilty on all counts. The man once respected in his town was now condemned, his mask permanently ripped away. When sentencing day came, Ethan entered the courtroom in shackles, his once proud shoulders slumped. Claire sat in the front row, her hands folded, not in vengeance, but in quiet resolve. The judge's words echoed across the chamber. Life without parole. Ethan's eyes darted toward Claire, perhaps searching for forgiveness, perhaps clinging to the life he had destroyed. But Claire didn't look away. She wasn't there for closure alone. She was there to reclaim the identity he tried to steal. Outside, reporters swarmed, asking her what gave her the strength to come forward. Claire answered simply, "Survival isn't just living. It's telling the truth." Her story became not just one of betrayal and brutality, but of resilience. A woman silenced in the dirt had risen not only to confront her past, but to warn others that silence is never the end. Her voice carried louder than Ethan's violence ever could. The town never forgot. Parents warned their children with hushed voices, "You never really know someone." Ethan faded into prison walls, his name a shadow, but Claire rebuilt her life.
She volunteered at shelters, speaking to women who felt trapped, reminding them that even in their darkest nights, there is always a way back to the light. Her daughter, raised by her sister during those lost years, slowly grew to understand the weight her mother carried. Together, they stitched back the life Ethan tried to sever. For Detective Tompkins, the case remained her defining legacy. She admitted, "I almost gave up, but sometimes the truth finds its way back, no matter how deep it's buried." And for viewers who hear this story, the question lingers, how many other voices remain unheard, waiting for the courage or the chance to knock on the doors of those who silence them? Claire's story isn't just about survival. It's about the resilience of the human spirit when faced with betrayal so profound it nearly ended her life. It reminds us that truth, no matter how long it is buried, will one day rise. And Ethan's downfall is a chilling lesson that the lives we bury will eventually bury us. As you reflect on this case, ask yourself, if someone you loved betrayed you at the deepest level, what strength would you find to keep going? Would you have the courage to confront them or the resilience to rebuild? Claire did both. And her story forces us all to consider the power of survival, a voice of truth. Before we end, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click subscribe so you never miss our upcoming stories.